There are many Islamic movements nowadays. How to know which one is Salafi? Well, ask them. They're real proud of it. Do you really want the answer to this one? You guys want the answer to this one? It's not our topic. Do you want the answer to this? You don't want to hear it, do you? You're not a Salafi, are you? Okay. Actually, there are things that are called deviant groups, and then there are groups which are normal, but people try to turn it into something deviant. To be a follower of a particular jurisprudence, such as Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, Jafri, like this, according to Al-Azhar University, they ruled on these 5 and said that these are all matahab. These are matahab of learning how to make wudu, how to pray, things like that. And if somebody follows one or the other, that's fine, because you don't have time to become a scholar, great. If you want to go further than that, you can. But the point here is, those are normal groups. You can also have groups that are, let's say, the Muslim Youth Soccer Team, or the Kuala Lumpur Muslim Ladies Association for helping the orphans. These are all groups. There's nothing wrong with that. The deviance comes in when they try to tie whatever they're saying to Islam and claim that it's the only Islam. There's where the deviance comes. Islam is wide and it allows a lot. It's not tolerance, not like we said before, but it's out of Allah's compassion and His mercy that a lot of things didn't really come up at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, so that you would just say definitely that guy's out of it, this guy's out of it. He didn't want us to do that. He talked about it and Allah talked about it. We are the ummatun wasatun. Wasta is to be in the middle. We stay in the middle. We don't go to the extremes. There's no such thing as radical Islam, because radical is out of Islam. Okay, now, having said that, and I'm talking about the words only, not the people, the words. There are very good people who call themselves Sufis. They're very good. But the word Sufi itself was not something that came from Prophet Muhammad. So you can be a good person without being a Sufi. Okay? And you can get to Allah without following a tariqah. Now, I have heard some of them say you can't. Well, now they're going to have to prove their point for me. We're going to give them the chance to be a scientist and bring you proof. I mentioned that only one. There are many where people will say our group is the only group. Most of the people in the groups don't really have this attitude, but there are extremists. And when somebody says we are Salafi, first of all, I'm going to guess that he doesn't know the Arabic language. I'm going to guess he probably doesn't know. Or he said it so much he forgot what it really means. Salaf means somebody who's dead and gone. These are your predecessors. So a guy's standing there telling you, I'm dead. And they say Salaf Asali, righteous predecessor. Okay, I'm a dead righteous guy. It doesn't work. The one who came up with this idea was actually a very good scholar, but he was a loner in that he had his own thing going. He didn't come from a particular following of anything. He just come up with a lot of stuff on his own. He was an expert in his studies in hadith. He was one of the best muhaddith in the last century. He died in September of 1999, and if you see a picture of him, you look at me, you look at him, you say he must come from the same family. Very much alike. His name was Sheikh Nasruddin al-Albani. He did some wonderful things. MashaAllah, we make dua for him. But this is a mistake, and I make more mistakes really than anybody. So it's not that, but the mistake was to say that we need to have a group to call ourselves by, to distinguish ourselves from the people of Ahl Bid'ah. Well, the Ahl Bid'ah means people of innovation. So we'll call ourselves on the same manhaj or methodology of the Salaf Salih. That's what he was saying. We are on the methodology of the righteous predecessors. That's what he's trying to say. But the people turned it into a group. and use that to justify whatever they did. It's not acceptable. That is not acceptable, and he would never have endorsed it because his own students have told me themselves they didn't endorse it. Muhammad Jabali, bin Uthaymeen, you can go and talk to them in Saudi Arabia yourself, see them or talk to their students at least, and ask them, and they will say, no, 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 not what's going on. This is not what we meant, not like this. Not going in and pointing at people, calling them kafir, and labeling all the leaders and things like that. That was never intended. The next thing, you didn't ask this one, but the people say Wahhabi. Catch yourself before you say that. Stop yourself. The other word I told you is the Arabic word, so is this. It means to bestow, to give. Al-Wahhab, if you say Al-Wahhab, you must be very careful now. You just said Allah's name. Allah is Al-Wahhab. He is the bestower, the ultimate bestower. So you don't take Allah's name and play with it like that. What really happened over 200 years ago, there was a student of knowledge who memorized the Quran when he was not even a teenager yet. He studied all of the fiqh, jurisprudence of the Hanafi. Then he began to study others. And his father, who was a scholar, told him to stop. Just stay with what we have. He said, I want to learn the others. His father almost disowned him because of it. It was very upsetting. You know, don't do that. But he wanted to learn all of it so he could understand. And he began to learn quite a bit. He became convinced that he needed to learn more, and he discovered through this learning that the people of his time were making a grave mistake. I used the right word too, because they were worshiping at graves. They were literally going to graves and calling upon dead people to help them. Righteous people, good people, but they're dead. And even if they were alive, what could they do? They could only make dua for you. Nobody's got any magic. You ask Allah to solve these impossible situations and He can do it. And that's what he was telling the people. And some of those who were making money or getting good position in the community out of these grave worshiping deals took exception to his group because they came in and kicked over all of these monuments on these graves. And of course they had no evidence to support what they did, so instead of dealing with the rationale of, why don't you look at what you're doing is wrong, instead they labeled his followers as Wahhabi. Why? Because they couldn't call him by his real name. His name was Muhammad, and they would have had to say they're Mohammedans. And no Muslim would do that anyway. So they call him Wahhabi because his father was Abdul Wahhab. So he was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he wrote a book called Kitab al-Iman. The book, if you read it and take the cover off and you don't know who wrote it, you'll say, this is a great book. It's very good about the belief in Allah is one and the teachings that come with it. It's kind of like a workbook. It just has a few verses or something and then tells you to go look up the rest of it. And it was given to some scholars who were attacking and saying, these Wahhabi people, so and so on. So what do you think about Kitab al-Iman? It says, it's a bad book, don't read it. It's okay. So they gave him the book without the cover on it. Didn't tell him. This is a scholar. I'm not going to tell you who. Big scholar. Current. He read it and he loved it. He said, this is the aqidah of a real Muslim, the belief system of a real Muslim. And when they said, well, here's the cover for the book, and he went, huh? And he said, astaghfirullah, I made a mistake. Big mistake. All of us need to understand that whenever somebody doesn't want to admit their mistake, it's a lot easier to point and say, he's a Wahhabi. They're so-and-so. They're such and such. Rather than admit what, and we're going to go back and look again at what we said in our speech. The king has no clothes. Ooh. All of us make mistakes. Just admit it. What is the big deal? Only Allah is free of mistakes.
شيخنا بارك الله فيك. يوجد في الغرب وفي الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية داعي يقول أن ينتسب الشخص للسلفية فيه خطأ لغوي، كان يقول أنا سلفي، هذا خطأ لغوي أصلا، وذلك بمثابة أن تقول أنني أنا من السلف ومت وأنا ميت، وهذا ليس بصحيح. والذي أتى بهذا الوصف قال واحد انفرد بهذا القول، ومن ثم ذكر أنه علامة وشيخ ومحدث، ولكن انفرد بهذا القول وهو الشيخ العلامة محمد ناصر الدين الألباني رحمه الله تعالى. فما صحة قوله؟ أفيدونا بارك الله فيكم.
هذا الكلام ليس صحيح، فقد ذكر كثير من العلم قبل الشيخ الألباني هذا اللقب، فقال فلان السلفي فلان الأثري، ولم يعب عليهم أحد ذلك. وما أرادوا بقول السلفي أي أنه مات ممن سلف، وإنما أرادوا السلفي يعني يتبع من سلف، وهذا والله أعلم أنه يريد أن يبطل مذهب السلف، فذكر هذا من باب التشويش على الأعاجم في بلاد العجم الذين لا يعرفون العربية أو أنهم ضعفاء في العربية. وليس العبرة بالألفاظ وإنما العبرة بالحقائق، وهذه النسبة كسائر النسب أيضا. كأي نسبة أخرى.
نعم يا شيخ.
وهذه النسبة السلفي كأي نسبة أخرى، كما يقال أشعري وليس من قبيلة الأشاعرة، ويقال القدري وهو منسوب إلى الذين ينفون القدر لا إلى الذين يثبتون القدر. فهذه النسب لبيان معنى الشخص وإلى ماذا ينتسب. فإذا قيل سلفي المراد أنه يتبع مذهب السلف، ونصيحتي لكم أن تحذروا من هذا الشخص، فواضح جدا أنه يريد أن يصرف الناس عن مذهب السلف. فاسألوه هل كانت هذه كلمة سلفي معروفة قبل الألباني أم لا؟ إذا قال كانت معروفة قبل الشيخ الألباني فبطلت دعواه أن لم يقلها إلا الألباني، وإن قال لم يقلها أحد قبل الألباني أخرجنا له تراجم من علماء ماتوا قبل الشيخ الألباني ولقبوا بالسلفي. واسألوه السؤال الآتي: هل مذهب السلف حق وما خالفه ضلال أم لا؟ فإن أجاب إجابة صريحة وقال نعم مذهب السلف حق وما خالفه ضلال فالحمد لله، وإن لم يجب إجابة صريحة وأخذ يعلل تعليقات باردة اعلموا أن الرجل على خطر وعلى ضلال. وإن يسر الله تعالى سأرسل لكم أسماء لعلماء قبل أن يخلق الألباني قد لقبوا بالسلفي، وحينئذ يبطل قوله بأن لم يقل سلفي إلا الألباني.
أحسن الله إليكم وبارك الله فيكم شيخنا. هذا الداعي نفسه أيضا يقول أن مذاهب الإسلام 5، وذكر الحنفية والمالكية والشافعية والحنبلية وذكر الجعفرية أيضا.
نعم، هذا كلام باطل. فالمذاهب ليست 4 وليست 5 وإنما أكثر من ذلك. فكل عالم كبير له طلبة وله مدرسة وكتب وله أتباع يقال له مذهب ذهب إليه أي قال به. ففي مذهب الظاهري مثلا، مذهب مثلا الأوزاعي، لكن المذاهب التي اشتهرت هي 4. فإذا قيل المذاهب 4 فالمراد به المشهور 4. أما المذهب الجعفري الذي ورد فيه السؤال فهذا ليس من مذاهب أهل السنة، خارج عن أهل السنة، مذهب بدعي. من أضافه فإنما أراد أن يضرب مذهب أهل السنة، فعل ذاك عن جهل أو عن سوء قصد.